Hey, it's all about automation, and this is Gary Mintchell here. I'm in my room at the JW Marriott Desert Ridge in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm packed up and ready to leave the 2011 edition of the Honeywell Users Group, or HUG as it's known, quite euphemistically. The 2011 edition kicked off very well. There were over 1,000 people in attendance, and there used to be a rule of thumb about 50-50 split of customers to company employees, but over the last few years that the companies didn't want to send as many people, so the ratio is higher on the customer side. So there must be a lot of customers here, and I met a bunch of them. And if you were one of them, and I had breakfast with you or something like that, yeah, please send your story. I always like to get stories of what real people are doing rather than what marketing people tell me they should be doing. Anyway, that's an aside. So the Honeywell Users Group kicked off very optimistically and enthusiastically. Norm Gilsdorf, the president of Honeywell Process Solutions, which is the part of Honeywell we mostly talk about, announced he got up and he first said, well, we've gone from automation company to business transformation company. And later in an interview, a private interview I asked him to flesh that idea out. And he's talking about as these solutions, they build solutions, which is a bunch of products that all work together, and we can go in and kind of help engineer and stuff. But the products are getting such that as the solutions get bigger and some of the software gets more powerful, actually they're helping transform their customers' businesses by thinking a broader scheme about the stuff automation world's been talking about for a while, quite frankly, about making manufacturing, production, whichever term you want to use, more efficient, more effective, and essentially more profitable and more value to the enterprise. So when I talked to Norm about that, he's talking essentially those kind of ideas, and a little bit it transforms Honeywell process also. Let's see. I took so many notes. This is crazy. By the way, I'm using Notes Plus on my iPad right now to take notes, and it's pretty cool. And trying a bunch of others, and we'll see how they work. But back to Gilsdorf. Mostly he was talking about the partnerships that they're building, and they're building with IBM, and in many ways working with SAP, and they're taking their solutions to the next level. And so there was a lot of talk about that higher end kind of stuff, the software end, that people accuse me of being higher end stuff, and I think it's just all effective manufacturing automation stuff. But I asked him about the instrumentation level because he announced a reorganization, and mostly it's the stuff we expect from Honeywell. They do a lot of engineering services, a lot of support services. That's a big chunk of their business, is that, as it is for their competitors, quite frankly. And but one of the new divisions that he put up, one of the 5, is called Field Devices. And I said, this is interesting because when I think Honeywell, to be honest, I really don't think about a lot of strength in a lot of field devices. And he said, well, over the last few years, we have really emphasized the more intelligent field devices, really high-end, really intelligent analytical kinds of things. And with the reorganization and kind of when you restructure, you put in new incentives and things for managers and so on. And one of the new things is to invest more in the more typical transmitters and field devices that you would expect in a production plant. So expect to see more out of that. Other than that, I talked also to Norm about leadership development, and like all good CEOs, that's all good CEOs. Very concerned about leadership development. He actually told me about a commitment to bring in 50 new young engineers in the Americas, in Europe, and in Asia, and what they're and just bring in 50 young ones every year, and then put them through some training programs and develop them and develop new talent all the time. This is a real commitment of Honeywell to develop young talent and bring them along. And he said even in the downturn, they only cut it back very slightly in one area, and that's cool. That's a real benefit, both for developing new young manufacturing engineers, because a lot of these people and process engineers, whatever title you want, And if we want to get them involved, we've got to get them jobs. And if you want to keep your company growing, you need to bring in fresh talent, new ideas. So they didn't do this back to back. They had a little bit of a break because it's hard to either precede or follow Jason Urso. Jason is the Chief Technology Officer for Honeywell Process Solutions, and I think he's been the CTO ever since I started coming to Hug. And his presentations are among the best of any I see. He goes for an hour. He talks about all the new products and either just now released or will be released within the next 6 to 9 months, and he's very rapid fire, and he just keeps on going, and he skips from technology to technology to technology to technology, and it's simply amazing how he keeps all that straight. And so it was an hour packed with stuff, and I've got like 5 minutes, so I'm not going to give you the whole thing. He's talking about optimizing assets and plants. And there's a lot of talk about One Honeywell, and it's been for years. Jack Bollock used to talk about that years ago. So we try to take, or they try to take, all the technologies from different divisions. And so one of the things they really pushed is mobile operator. That's part of their wireless thing. Their wireless is much broader than just the old arguments about ISA 100 and wireless heart and all that kind of stuff. And they have a very broad portfolio that they're really putting together. And as the director of that area told me in a later interview, Gary, we told you we'd be getting in solutions, and we are wireless solutions. So back to Urso. Urso was talking about that. There's a new product that's been released called Dolphin. It's a mobile, well, they'll be using it in this division as a mobile operator device, and they have a software that aids the mobile operator. And so that is going on, and that was a new, actually I got the press release, I think, this morning on that. So a new thing coming up like that, but they have more stuff coming, like iPad apps, iPhone apps, and so on. And another big thing that they considered extremely important is they have a new safety thing, and they're really pushed, like everybody should be, cybersecurity. And the ISA, through their Compliance Institute structure, has a certification it's a security certification. And I was told later by Kevin Staggs that it's really a difficult and very thorough certification process for certifying your product as meeting these safety standards, security standards. So Honeywell has the first product, and it's one of their new safety products, that is certified ISKI, for if you like names of acronyms or something. But anyway, they're very proud of that, and it's really cool. And they're the first one. There's others in the queue, but they said it was a really rigorous evaluation process. Personal protective equipment, working with another division of Honeywell. Ideas about personal protective, different things from like helmets to clothing and so on. And so, could you imagine, a fully censored outfit that you have where you could be located in an emergency? One product they do have is like a wearable tag that's wireless, and it's a gas detector, and it would give instant feedback if there are dangerous gases in some area, and it would be much faster than if waiting for somebody to call, and sometimes you'd even know it's that dangerous, perhaps. That was a really cool thing. Jason 3 times called it game-changing. So that's how important they see that at Honeywell. I think I'll skip on the rest of that because there's so much stuff he talked about. A lot of collaboration, some NERC SIP, and you could check my article out in the May issue where I wrote about NERC SIP of Automation World, and that's a utility power grid standard, I guess. And then we talked about another thing we talked about a little bit: total cost of ownership. Large vendors have been talking about total cost of ownership for years, and so Honeywell is no different. And they talk about ways to calculate total cost of ownership. That is, we don't just, when you buy a system, don't just think about it cost me, $1 million or $100,000 or whatever. What you really need to think about is, today it cost me $100,000. It's going to cost me $30,000 to maintain it, or whatever that might be. So over the lifespan of that system, product, whatever, this is what my cost would be per year. And a lot of people forget that a lot of these things are an investment, and investments have paybacks, and they need to be amortized over some period of time. But an awful lot of purchasing people, some managers tend to think like they only think about that initial cost, and instead of evaluating the whole thing. And ask how many customers are actually considering all that when they make purchasing decisions, and it really doesn't sound like a lot yet. But if you're an engineer and you're looking at justifying projects and so on, it's a good thing to try to get people to think more broadly. And it's an investment, and it's going to pay back over time. You need to think about the paybacks too. What what are the benefits that you're going to get in relation to the total costs? And and then I had a bunch of other cool interviews. The only last thing I want to talk about is whenever people think wireless and ISA 100 and Honeywell, they're thinking about the long-standing battles of the wireless HART camp versus the ISA 100 wireless camp. And I didn't really get into a lot into it. When I talked to Ray Rogowski, he really wanted to talk about the bigger picture of wireless and the whole thing. And for a couple of years now, that's been the message at Honeywell. But they still are the major supporter of the Wireless Compliance Institute, and probably the biggest, although they're trying to get more end user support. But it's kind of like this: where did those end users come from? Is always part of the equation. So anyway, I talked to Andre Restaino and then Philip Ng. Philip Ng was with Honeywell, Andre's with ISA, and it's a little complicated. He said his check comes from ISA, but he works for the Wireless Compliance Institute, which is not, it's a wholly owned, totally separate thing from ISA. So anyway, that's ISA. And that's the only place where I really got into some of this wireless HART versus ISA 100 stuff. And basically, they said, well, end users tell us that ISA 100 is so much better than wireless HART. I said, well, it's not really what I've heard from end users. They said that there really is such little difference. Who cares? Well, finally heard a little bit about the difference between the two. And I don't know if this is 100% true. This is coming back, and I'm not going to read the specs. When I studied radio electronics, that was a long time ago, and I'm not going to restudy it. Sorry. But anyway, ISA 100 allows for both star and mesh configuration. Star is your typical Ethernet, where you have a hub and spokes go out. So all the spokes speak to the hub, and then the hub is the bottleneck, so to speak. So anyway, so that it supports that and the mesh, and they say that's much better because in a mesh, whenever this guy needs to talk, he uses the battery power of this guy. And so you're draining the batteries of a lot of devices, and if you can do it in a star on a point-to-point basis, you don't drain so many batteries. So that's the big thing there, and their view of wireless HART is that it's only mesh. But I'll tell you, there are smart engineers working on the other one too, and they also are tackling the battery problem. So I think in the end, anytime you've got a wireless device that's totally wireless with no power supplies, you're going to have a battery problem, and everybody's working on that problem. So you just take your pick. I talked to Mike Brooks, who works for Chevron Ventures, and he's a very smart guy. I've known him for quite a long time. And he did a presentation on wireless, but basically he was talking about, and this is important, that when you put it in, if you're going to do a site survey, don't just like go to Google Earth or something like that and look down and say, oh, here's the size of my plant, and so I could cover it in wireless this way, or get like a major networking vendor to come in and they do a huge site survey. Get somebody that really knows how to do a site survey in a process plant, that with all the construction and all the pipes and the metal and everything that's all around. So make sure you do a thorough site survey. Now, you're going to blanket perhaps your plant in Wi-Fi. Sounds cool, except did you allow for all the bandwidth? If you want to start using remote cameras for video surveillance or something like that, it takes a lot of bandwidth. If you start adding more other devices in Wi-Fi, it takes a lot of bandwidth. You better do some upfront engineering, network engineering on your system to make sure that you've got the bandwidth to handle everything you're doing, and you can add to it and it's flexible. know your constraints. If you're located beside an airport, you got to know that you can't bleed radio over into the airport area and so on. So it's very important. It's a very good talk. I got the 5-minute version. I saw him in the hallway, and I had another appointment, so I couldn't see his talk live. But then following Mike was Herman Story. Herman Story is a retired shell engineer. He's the co-chairman of the ISA 100 committee. Was the most balanced. He told me it was going to be controversial. I don't consider it controversial because he probably thought that because he didn't put on his evangelist hat and just expound it. We got the only right way, and this is the and all that. It was one of the most reasoned explanations of what's going on with ISA 100. He dealt with the problem of convergence of ISA 100 to wireless HART and some of the problems that it'll take, both from engineering and political standards and business reasons. It was really good. And what was mostly interesting was the work of the Working Group 15, the Dot 15 committee, on the back structure and handling all that. And a lot of important work there. And that kind of fits back in with what Mike was talking about. It's some of that upfront systems networking engineering you need to do. So, I talk fast, but there's a lot of stuff here. It was a really busy time. Very optimistic. I'm glad to see things pick up for Hug because they had been pretty much down, but it is back up to about 2007 levels. So, coming back. This is Gary Mintchell. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been on the road an awful lot. I've got more videos to pick up from some of my other trips. So, anyway, till then, it's all about automation. Have a good one.